I first worked with the idea of the exhibition changing from venue to venue when I made a show in Düsseldorf in 2010. I carved into the floor, and when the exhibition was finished, I lifted up the floor and moved it to another exhibition venue. The idea is that the image, which is of the Ship of Fools, actually becomes an action, and so it leaves one place, unmoors from one place, and it travels to another venue. But when it travels, it changes and it morphs to fit the new space. So, for example, the second place that the ship went to was a small gallery in Brussels with a very beautiful tiled floor, and the sails of the ship then matched the floor, so they're woven to be the same pattern as the floor, and the sculptures were melted to also fit the floor. When I make a show, I always adapt it for the space, but this is the most explicit way of doing it. I think I just am interested in specific images, but within the medieval age, it's so different from our age of representing things. That really interests me, like a completely different way of making images. I'm interested in occupying that position myself, to try to imagine the subjective position of the medieval artist and then relate to it. So I'm also interested in Neolithic, Stone Age things, but for this exhibition I just wanted the medieval things. I always think about how the viewer will walk around the space, and I try to make some, not a narrative, but some help for understanding. So in this show, there is, on this wall, there's this Ship of Fools image, and next to it there's a piece of wood from the 15th century. And on the opposite wall, there's the Ship of Fools scrambled and made new, and then there are sculptures made from this wood. So there's a link between this is the old wall and this is the new wall. And similarly, on this wall, there's a kind of river here, and a river there, and a river there. So I try to make it easy for the viewer to see the similarities in the work. The different materials, especially the wood, each has a story. So the piece of wood, the 15th century piece of wood, my father gave to me, and he found it in a Cambridge college. Cambridge is where I'm from. And they were renovating the library, and they took out this beam and they threw it away. So he carried it home, and then he kept it for years, and then he gave it to me, and I've used it to make several different sculptures. The piece of mahogany, the big plank of wood carved, also has a story that it was felled in the British colony in Belize, and they transported the trees down the river to the ships, and most of the trees floated, but the heaviest ones sunk, and they went into the bed of the river, into the mud, and there they stayed for 150 years until recently people found them again, and then they dragged them out of the riverbed and sold them. So I'm interested in materials that have a certain past, and also I use that in my own work. For example, the sculptures in the middle of the room, they're made from previous sculptures of mine. So I took the older sculptures and melted them into a new shape. The sculptures that I made called Liquidity in the Mind of the Fool are made from materials that have some link with medieval times, like stained glass and enamel, also rock crystal and some fossils and shells, quite basic materials. But I wanted to work with materials that are shiny, very appealing instantly, almost foolish materials, because the way that they're put together is very crude and very fluid, I guess. They're not planned, they're not crafted, they're just put together. And I wanted to take the position of the fool myself to make these things. They're kind of ugly sculptures.